Clara Whitmore set down the coffee pot and her hands did not shake. That was the worst part. 12 years of loving a man who never once looked up and her hands did not shake. Clara's like a sister to me, Nathaniel Brooks said to the woman at his table. Practically raised in this house. She'll see to whatever you need. Clara smiled. She said, "Yes, sir." And she walked out of that room already gone. If you want to see what a woman does when she finally stops waiting, stay with me to the end. Subscribe and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The bell over the kitchen door rang at 4 in the morning, and Clara Whitmore was already awake. She'd been awake since 3. She always was. There was a difference she'd learned between a house that ran and a house that appeared to run. And the difference was a woman standing in a cold kitchen in the dark, doing the arithmetic nobody thanked her for. "You'll wear yourself down to the bone, girl." Bess came in from the yard with her sleeves already rolled 70 years old and moving like 40. It ain't right, one woman carrying a whole valley on her back. The Hendricks note comes due Thursday. I didn't ask about no note. Bess. I asked when you last slept. Clara turned a page in the ledger. There's $140 short and 11 families on that west parcel who don't know it yet. When I fix that, I'll sleep. Bess set a cup down hard enough to say what she thought about it and said nothing more. By 6. Clara had walked the length of the north field with Silas Doyle, the foreman who was 60 and had opinions. "Corn's burning," he said. "Third week of no rain. Reckon we lose the whole east acreage if it don't break. Then we don't grow corn on the east acreage." Silas stopped walking. "Ma'am, we put it in hay. Hay doesn't need what corn needs, and Colonel Ridley's cavalry contract pays $11 a ton, and he can't get it from Maryland this year." She kept walking. "I wrote him in April." "You wrote him in April?" "I did." "Does Mr. Brooks know you wrote him in April?" Clara didn't answer that. She'd learned somewhere around year 6 that the question didn't have a good answer, and asking it out loud only embarrassed everybody. Silas took off his hat, turned it once in his hands and put it back on. It was the closest thing to a boa man like Silas would ever give anybody. "Hey, it is then, Miss Clara." She got back to the house at 7 and found the whole place turned upside down. "Guests?" Bess said grim. "2 carriages. Mrs. Honoria Brooks and a Miss Abigail Rowe of Richmond and a maid in trunks, Clara. Trunks like they mean to stay through Christmas." Clara stood very still in the middle of the kitchen. "He didn't tell me." "No, ma'am, he did not." "He didn't tell me, and there's nothing laid in but salt pork and the good linen's not aired." "Clara, and the blue room's got a leak in it since the storm, and I told him in May." "Clara." Bess took hold of her wrist. "Breathe." Clara breathed. Then she pulled her hair back, tied her apron, and said, "Kill 2 of the hens, not the layers. Send Tobias to the Pierce place for butter, and tell him I'll settle it Friday. And Bess," she was already halfway to the stairs, "put Miss Rowe in my room. It's the only one that doesn't leak." Bess's face changed. "And where do you sleep?" "I'll manage." Clara Whitmore. "I said I'll manage." Aunt Honoria Brooks had a voice like a door closing. "Nathaniel." She stood in the front hall with her gloves still on, surveying the house the way a general surveys ground he intends to take. "You are 35 years old." "I'm aware, Aunt." "You have 4,000 acres a mill and no wife. Your father would be ashamed." "My father died owing $11,000 to a bank in Norfolk, so I'd thank you not to raise him at me before breakfast." Clara came down the stairs then, with fresh linens over her arm, and the whole hall turned to look at her. Miss Abigail Rowe was 22, pretty in the way a person is pretty when nothing has ever been asked of them, and she looked at Clara with genuine, uncomplicated kindness. "Oh, thank you. You must be the housekeeper. It's such a lovely home." Silence. Nathaniel laughed. It wasn't cruel. That was the thing Clara would turn over in her hands for weeks afterward, like a stone she couldn't put down. It wasn't cruel at all. It was easy. It was the laugh of a man who'd never once considered the question. No, this is Clara. My father took her in when she was 15. She's like a sister to me, practically raised in this house." He was already turning back toward the parlor. "Clara, would you see to Miss Rowe's things, and there's coffee wanted." "Yes, sir," Clara said. She said it perfectly. Her voice didn't catch. She dipped her head to Miss Rowe, who smiled at her with that same easy kindness, and she carried the linens up the stairs at exactly the pace she always carried them. She got to the landing. She set the linens on the rail. And she stood there with one hand flat against the wall, and for 11 seconds, Clara Whitmore could not remember how to make her lungs work. 12 years. She had been 15 when her mother died of the fever, and her father followed 6 weeks after leaving Clara with a Bible, a mule, and a debt. Old Mr. Brooks had ridden out to the Whitmore place himself and said, "Your daddy was a good man, and I owe him more than I paid him. You'll come home with me." She'd come home with him. And then old Mr. Brooks had died too, and left his son a fortune made of paper and a plantation eating itself alive. And Nathaniel had come back from the war with a scar on his jaw and no idea what a ledger was. And it had been Clara, 19 years old. Clara, who sat up 7 straight nights at the kitchen table with 3 years of ruined books and found the $1,100 the old overseer had been stealing. She'd found it. She'd walked into Nathaniel's study at 2 in the morning with the proof in her hand and her eyes red from lamplight, and he'd looked up and said, "Clara, you are a wonder." That was the first time she loved him. She was 19. She had thought God, she'd been young. She had genuinely thought that a man who called you a wonder at 2 in the morning was a man on his way to loving you back. 12 years. 11 seconds on a landing. Like a sister to me. Clara picked up the linens. She made the bed in her own room, for another woman tucked the corners the way she'd been taught, and went down to make the coffee. Dinner was the worst of it. And of course the Rows have connections in Richmond and Baltimore, both, Honoria was saying. Abigail's father sits on the bank board. A man in your position, Nathaniel, with your acreage and alliance like that would settle everything. Aunt. I'm speaking plainly. You're speaking about a young woman sitting 3 feet from you as though she's a bill of lading. Abigail laughed. I don't mind. She's spoken about me that way since I was 6. Clara, standing at the sideboard, found she liked the girl. That was somehow more painful than if she'd been horrible. Miss Whitmore. Abigail turned in her chair. Won't you sit? There's a place? Oh, she doesn't. Nathaniel started. I've eaten, thank you, Clara said. The pie needs watching. Clara never sits, Nathaniel said, warm, fond, and utterly catastrophically pleased with himself. She's the reason any of this works. 12 years, and I don't believe I've ever seen her sit down. Bess dropped a spoon in the kitchen. Clara looked at the back of Nathaniel Brooks's head, the man she had built a life for, board by board ledger, line by ledger line, and who had just said the truest thing anyone had ever said about her, and thought it was a compliment, and something inside her that had been holding for 12 years, quietly let go. It didn't feel like breaking. That surprised her. It felt like setting down something heavy. I'll fetch the pie, she said. She was on the back step at 10 that night when Silas found her. Miss Clara. If it's the Hendricks note, Silas, I swear to God. It's Annie Doyle. He turned his hat in his hands. My boy's girl. Her baby's come early and it's come wrong, and there ain't a doctor closer than Fredericksburg. Clara was up before he finished the sentence. Get the wagon. Ma'am, it's 4 miles of bad road in the dark. Silas, get the wagon. She was in the Doyle cabin for 11 hours. She'd learned it from her mother, who'd learned it from hers. The turning the warm cloths. The way you talk a frightened 17-year-old girl through the part where she's sure she's dying. She'd done it 8 times in 12 years for the families on that land, and she had never once lost a mother, and only twice a child, and she carried both of those nights in her like buckshot. At 5 in the morning, the baby cried. Annie Doyle, white as paper, gripped Clara's wrist and wouldn't let go. Miss Clara, they said you was gonna leave. That the master's taken a wife, and there won't be no place for you. Clara's hands went still in the basin. Who said that? Everybody says it, ma'am. Annie's eyes were huge. Don't go, please don't go. There ain't nobody else. My mama died 'cause there weren't nobody else. Clara looked down at her own hands in the red water and did not answer for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "You rest now, Annie." She walked home at dawn because the wagon was needed elsewhere, and that was how she met William Carter. He came up the road on a gray horse, a big man weathered maybe 40, with a rifle scabbard and a saddlebag, and the unhurried look of somebody who'd stopped being in a hurry a long war ago. He drew up when he saw her. "Ma'am." Clara kept walking. "Sir?" "You're bleeding." She looked down. There was blood on her sleeve to the elbow. "It isn't mine." He absorbed that without blinking, which she noted. "Doyle Place. You know it. Bought the old Fletcher tract in April. Doyle's are my north line." He swung down off the horse, didn't ask, just did it, and walked beside her leading the animal. "Boy or girl?" "Girl. 5 pounds if she's an ounce. She'll do." "And the mother?" Clara stopped walking. In 12 years, nobody had asked her that second question. Not once. They asked about the baby. The baby was the news. The mother was the furniture. "She'll do too," Clara said. It was close. "I reckon it usually is." He started walking again, easy giving her the space to catch up or not. "Carter. William Carter." "Clara Whitmore." "Brooks Place." "That's right." "You the housekeeper up there." And Clara, exhausted, bloody to the elbow, running on 11 hours and no sleep, and a sentence at a dinner table. She couldn't get out of her teeth, heard herself say something she had never said out loud in her life. "No, sir. I'm the reason there is a Brooks Place." She stopped dead in the road, appalled at herself. "I beg your pardon. I don't know why I said that." William Carter looked at her for a good 3 seconds. Then he said, "Because it's true." He walked her the last mile and asked her 4 questions. She counted them afterward. She lay awake and counted them like coins. "What do you do up there exactly?" And when she started to answer the small way, the modest way, the way you answer, so nobody feels threatened, he'd said, "No, ma'am." The real answer. "Who taught you the books?" "Nobody. I taught myself." Then somebody ought to say so out loud once in a while. "Do you get paid?" That one had stopped her cold. "I have a home," she'd said. "That ain't what I asked." "I have a home, Mr. Carter." "No, ma'am." He'd said it gently. That was the unbearable part. "You have a place you work. There's a difference, and I reckon you know it better'n I do." And the last one. At the gate. With the sun coming up behind the house she'd saved, and the man she loved asleep inside it. "What do you want, Miss Whitmore, for yourself? Not for them." Clara had opened her mouth, and discovered at 27 years old that she had absolutely no idea. "Nobody's ever asked me that," she said. William Carter tipped his hat. "Well," he said, "somebody has now." Nathaniel found her in the office at noon and knew immediately something was wrong, which was, she'd think later, the cruelest possible thing because it meant he could see her. He'd simply chosen for 12 years to look at other things. "You didn't come to breakfast." Annie Doyle had her baby. "Is she?" "Both alive." He sat down on the corner of the desk, which he'd done 1,000 times, which she had loved 1,000 times, and said, "God, you should have woken me." "For what? I'd have driven you." "You had guests." "Clara." He laughed a little. "Look at me. You look like the Walking Dead." "Thank you. You know what I mean." He nudged the ledger toward her. "Sit down, please, for once in your life." And she sat down. And for about 90 seconds, it was the way it had always been, the two of them, and the books, and the low, easy back and forth of two people who'd built something together, and Clara felt her whole traitorous heart lean toward him like a plant toward a window. Then he said, "Aunt Honoria wants to hold a thing, a supper, for the Rose." "When?" "Saturday." "Saturday's the county fair." "Well, after the fair then, or instead of I don't much care. 40 people, maybe 50. He was already looking at the window. "You'll manage it. You always manage it." Clara looked down at the ledger. 50 people, she said. In 4 days. With the Hendricks note due Thursday and no rain since June. You'll find a way. You always do. He stood, squeezed her shoulder. He squeezed her shoulder, and it went through her like a nail and said, "Honestly, Clara, I don't know what I'd do without you. You know that, don't you?" "Yes," Clara said. "I know that." He got to the door. "Nathaniel." He turned. "If I left," she said, "what would you do?" He laughed. He genuinely laughed the way you laugh when a child asks if the sun's coming back tomorrow, and he said, "Where on earth would you go?" And he closed the door. Clara sat in that office for a long time without moving. Then she opened the bottom drawer of the desk under the tax receipts, under the old surveys, and took out a letter that had come 3 weeks earlier from a law office in Richmond, addressed to Miss C. Whitmore, which she had read 4 times and told absolutely no one about. She read it a 5th time. Dear Miss Whitmore, in settling the final estate of the late Mr. Josiah Brooks, we find an instrument executed in 1811 and never entered, being a conveyance of 200 acres, known as the West Parcel, together with the mill race thereon, to Miss Clara Whitmore, in consideration of debts owed to her late father. The instrument requires only your signature to record. We are obliged to inform you that the parcel in question is presently pledged as security by Mr. Nathaniel Brooks against the Hendricks note. Your obedient servant, 200 acres. The West Parcel, 11 families on it. The single most valuable piece of ground on that plantation, and the security under the note that came due Thursday, and it was hers, and it had been hers since she was 21, and nobody had ever told her. Clara folded the letter and put it in her apron pocket. Her hands did not shake. Saturday came, and with it the county fair, and Clara went because Bess made her. "You'll go if I have to carry you." "There's 50 people coming to supper, Bess. There's 50 people coming to supper, and every one of 'em can eat cold ham and be glad. You are going to that fair, and you are going to eat something fried, and you are going to stand in the sun like a person." Bess jabbed a finger at her. 12 years, Clara. 12 years I have watched you get smaller. Go be big for one afternoon. So she went. And that was where William Carter found her at the horse pens and took off his hat and said, "Miss Whitmore." "Mr. Carter, you look considerably less like the walking dead." "That's the finest compliment I've had in a decade, and I'm not entirely joking." He laughed, a real one, surprised out of him, and Clara realized with a small lurch that she had made a man laugh on purpose, and that she hadn't done that in years, and that she used to be funny once a long time ago before she'd become a set of hands. "I've got a question for you," he said. "Business question." "Go on." "Your foreman tells me you moved 100 acres out of corn and into hay on account of a cavalry contract you wrote for in April." Silas talks too much. Silas talks exactly enough. William turned his hat over. "I've got 60 acres burning up right now and a family on every one of them. I came to this fair to ask a man named Brooks how he done it." Clara said nothing. "Only Brooks didn't know what I was talking about," William said. "Had to send for his foreman. Foreman said ask Miss Clara." The noise of the fair went on around them. The auctioneer, the fiddle. The children and Clara Whitmore stood in the middle of it and felt something enormous and terrifying crack open in her chest. "What did he say?" she asked. "Nathaniel, when the foreman said that." William was quiet a moment. "Ma'am, I don't think I ought to." "Please," he said. William met her eyes and didn't look away, and she would love him for that alone later when she understood what she was looking at. He said, "Oh, Clara handles the small things." Clara stood there. 12 years. 7 nights over the ruined books. 11 families. 8 babies. $140 short. And 11 hours in a cabin with her arms red to the elbow and a girl gripping her wrist saying, "Don't go there, ain't nobody else." Clara handles the small things. "Miss Whitmore." William's voice was very gentle. "You want me to walk you somewhere quiet?" "No." "You've gone white as gay." "No." She lifted her chin. "No, sir. No, sir. I have been quiet for 12 years. And then Clara Whitmore, who had never once in her life asked for anything, said, "Mr. Carter, there's a dance tonight at the Methodist ground." "There is. I've never been." "No. 12 years, never once." Her voice was perfectly steady, and her heart was going like a hammer. "I've laid out the tables for 4 of them. I've never stood on the floor." William Carter looked at her for a long moment. Then he put his hat on his head, offered her his arm, offered it plainly, the way a man offers a woman his arm, not a sister, not a housekeeper, not a set of hands that handles the small things, and said, "Then I reckon it's about time somebody asked." Clara looked at that arm, and she took it. 50 yards away, at the edge of the horse pens, with a cup of cider going warm in his hand, Nathaniel Brooks turned around. He saw a big man in a gray coat with his hat in his hand. He saw the man offer his arm. He saw a woman in a plain brown dress take it and tilt her head back and laugh. Head back, throat bare. Laughing in the sun, like she was 20 years old and nothing had ever been asked of her. And it took Nathaniel Brooks a full 4 seconds to understand that he was looking at Clara. The cider went over his boots. He didn't notice. "Nathaniel." Abigail Rowe touched his sleeve. "Are you unwell? You've gone quite—" "Who is that?" "I'm sorry. Who is that man?" Abigail looked and smiled, pleased for her. "Oh, I believe that's Mr. Carter from the old Fletcher place. Isn't it lovely your aunt says he's a widower? Everyone's saying he means to court her." Nathaniel didn't answer. He stood in the churned mud of the county fairground with cider on his boots and watched Clara Whitmore walk away on another man's arm. And for the first time in 12 years, Nathaniel Brooks looked directly at her. Really looked the way a man looks at something he is about to lose, and discovered that he did not know one single thing about her. Not one. He didn't know what she wanted. He didn't know if she'd ever been paid. I didn't know that she'd been awake for 11 hours the night before, with her arms red to the elbow, or that the note came due Thursday, or that she hadn't sat down at a table in his house in 12 years, or that the ground under his own feet, the 200 acres holding up everything he owned, had belonged to her since she was 21. He didn't know she could laugh like that. He'd just never heard it, because she had never once laughed like that at him. The fiddles started at 8, and Clara Whitmore stood at the edge of the Methodist dancing ground and did not move. "Second thoughts?" William Carter asked. "Considerable. We can go stand by the cider and look dignified." "I've stood by the cider for 12 years, Mr. Carter." "Then I reckon the cider's had enough of you." He held out his hand. "Ma'am." She'd forgotten how. That was the humiliating part. She'd forgotten the steps entirely, and had to be walked through the first 8 bars like a girl of 14, and she stepped on his boot twice and said, "I'm sorry," both times. And William Carter said, "Ma'am, I was at New Orleans. You ain't the worst thing that's happened to these feet." And she laughed. That was the sound that carried. Later people would say they heard it before they saw her, that hard, bright, surprised laugh coming out of the middle of the floor, and half the county turning to see who in the world it belonged to. And then the slow, strange ripple, as they figured out that it was Miss Clara from the Brooks place, who had laid out the tables at 4 of these dances and never once stood on the boards. Sarah Pierce grabbed her husband's arm. "That's her. She's dancing." "I got eyes, Sarah." "With Carter." "I got eyes, Sarah." Nathaniel Brooks stood under the lantern pole at the north end of the ground and watched all of it, and did not move, and did not blink, and did not put down the second cup of cider he had no memory of picking up. "You're being observed," his aunt said beside him. "I'm not doing anything. You are standing perfectly still with your jaw set, staring at a woman across a dance floor in a county where 60 people have nothing better to do than notice." Honoria opened her fan. "That is a great deal of something, Nathaniel." "She's never danced." "I beg your pardon." 12 years. His voice had gone strange. "She's never danced. Not once. I've been to every one of these, and she's never—" "Nathaniel, did you know she can't sit down?" He turned to look at his aunt, and there was something wild working behind his face. "In my own house, she won't sit at the table. I said it out loud at dinner Tuesday, like it was a charming thing. Nathaniel, Miss Rowe is watching you." He looked at Abigail Rowe, who was standing 10 feet off with a plate of cake in her hands and an expression of profound, uncomfortable understanding. "Then let her watch," he said, and walked out onto the floor. The music didn't stop, but a good deal of the county did. Carter. William turned. Clara neatly finished the phrase of the tune and only then let go of her hand. "Brooks. I'd like the next dance." "That ain't for me to give." "I'm not asking you." "No, sir, you surely ain't." William stepped back a pace, not far, just far enough, and looked at Clara. "Miss Whitmore." And Clara stood there with the fiddles going, and 60 people pretending not to listen, and Nathaniel Brooks put out his hand to her, the way he had put out his hand to her 10,000 times for a ledger, a cup, a letter, a decision, and said warmly, easily, with absolute certainty, "Clara, come on." 2 words, "Come on." The way you'd say it to a horse that had wandered. "No," Clara said. Nathaniel's hand stayed out in the air. "I'm sorry. I said no thank you." Her voice carried farther than she meant it to. "I'd like to finish this set." "Clara. Mr. Brooks." And there it was, Mr. Brooks, when she had called him Nathaniel since she was 19 years old, and every single person on that ground heard the change land like a dropped plate. "I've laid out these tables 4 times. I've never danced. I'd like to dance." She turned back to William, and Nathaniel Brooks stood alone in the middle of the Methodist dancing ground with his hand out and nothing in it. And after a moment, he closed the hand and walked off the boards, and old man Pierce, who was 79 and had no sense left, said out loud into a lull in the music, "Well, I'll be damned." Somebody finally told him no. The ride home was 11 minutes of silence. Then Honoria said, "You will dismiss her." "What?" "Not cruelly. Give her money. Give her a great deal of money. I don't care, but she cannot be in that house when a row becomes mistress of it, and after tonight she cannot be in that house at all." She stared straight ahead. "The entire county watched a woman in a brown dress refuse you in front of them, Nathaniel. Do you understand what that does to a man standing? She runs the place. She is a ward. She runs the place, Aunt Honoria." He was gripping the reins hard enough to hurt. "She has the mill accounts and the seed money and the men's contracts and 40 years of surveys in her head. If Clara walked off that hill tomorrow, I would not know where the water rights are filed." Honoria was quiet a moment. Then she said very softly, "Then you have made a serious mistake, and it is not the one you think." Clara came in at 11:30, and there was a lamp on in the office. "I know you're awake," Nathaniel said through the door. She stopped in the hall. She thought about walking past it. 12 years of not walking past it stood up in her and pushed her hand to the latch. He was sitting behind the desk with the Hendricks papers spread out and not one of them read. "Sit down." "I'll stand." "Clara." "I've been standing 12 years, Nathaniel. I've got the knack of it." He put both hands flat on the desk. "What is he to you? That is not your business. You have known that man 4 days. 6, Clara said. "And he has asked me more questions in 6 days than you have asked me in 12 years, so you'll forgive me if I don't measure it in days." Nathaniel opened his mouth and nothing came out. "You want to know what he asked me?" She was very calm. That was what frightened him. "He asked what I do here, not what I fetch, what I do. He asked who taught me the books. He asked if I'm paid." "You're not a servant. No, servants are paid. Clara, you have a home." "Say the rest of it," she said. "What?" "Say the rest of the sentence, Nathaniel. You have a home because I gave it to you. That's what's underneath, isn't it? 12 years and every kindness in this house has been a gift you handed down." Her voice never rose. "Do you know what a gift is? A gift is a thing that can be taken back. That's the difference between a gift and a wage, and I have never once in 12 years been standing on ground that couldn't be taken back." He stood it up so fast the chair went over. "Then take a wage." "What?" "Take a wage. Name it." He came around the desk. 200 a year. 3. Name a figure, Clara, I don't care what it is. The mill cleared 4,000 last season, and every dollar of that is yours as much as mine. And if a wage is what's wanted, then God in heaven take one, and let's be done with this." And Clara Whitmore laughed. It was not the laugh from the dance floor. It was short and hard, and it hurt him more than the no had. "What?" he said. "What? You think it's about money? You just said, 'I said I have never stood on ground that couldn't be taken back,' and you heard, 'Give the girl a wage.'" She pressed her fingers to her eyes for a moment. "Nathaniel, when Silas asked you Saturday how the hay contract came about, what did you say?" He went still. "He told you. Answer it. Clara, what did you say about me?" Nathaniel Brooks looked at the floor of his own office. "I said you handle the small things," he said. "Yes, I didn't mean. I know exactly what you meant." Clara went to the door. "That's the trouble. You didn't mean anything by it at all. If you'd meant it, I could be angry. A man who insults you knows you're there." She got the latch open. "I wrote Colonel Ridley in April," she said without turning around. $11 a ton, 300 tons, delivered at the river by October. That contract is worth $3,300, and it is the only reason this place will survive a summer without rain. And you did not know it existed until a stranger asked you about it at a horse pen in front of your neighbors. Clara. "Good night, Mr. Brooks." Bess found him at 2 in the morning sitting on the kitchen step with his boots off. "You'll catch cold." "It's July." "Then you'll catch something else." She lowered herself down beside him with a grunt and a sound like an old gate. "Go on and ask it." "Ask what?" "Whatever's got you sitting on my step at 2 in the morning like a whipped boy." Nathaniel put his head in his hands. "Bess, how long has she been getting up at 3? 12 years. 3 in the morning. Some mornings 4 if she's had a good week." Bess folded her arms. "Ain't had a good week since 18 and 14. That's not possible." "Mr. Nathaniel." She said it gently, and gently was the worst way anybody could have said it. "Who do you reckon lights the kitchen fire?" "I don't, the girls. There's 2 girls and they come at 6. Fire's got to be 4 hours gone by then, or there ain't no bread." Bess looked at him. 12 years, and you ain't never once wondered where the bread come from." He didn't answer. "You want the whole of it, or you want to stop now?" "Give me the whole of it." "She put Miss Rowe in her own room." Nathaniel's head came up. "Blue room's leakin' since May. She told you. You said you'd see to it." Bess's voice stayed flat and even, which made it worse. "So Miss Rowe got Clara's bed, and Clara's been 4 nights on a pallet in the back pantry, and if you go in there tomorrow, you'll find her shoes under a flour sack. And if you say one word about it to her, I'll deny I ever spoke." Nathaniel Brooks made a small sound. "Now you listen to me, 'cause I ain't saying it twice." Bess leaned in. "That child come here at 15 with a dead mama, a dead daddy, and a mule. Your father brung her home. And your father died, and you come back from that war, half a man with a hole in this place where $1,100 used to be. And it were her sat 7 nights at my table with them ruined books, till her eyes bled, and she found Amos Pell's thievin', and she walked into your study at 2 in the morning, with the proof of it. I remember. And you said, 'Clara, you are a wonder.'" "I remember, Bess." "You remember it?" Bess said, "'Cause you said it. She remembers it 'cause it were the best day of her life, and she has been livin' on it for 8 years, like a woman livin' on one biscuit." The county talked for a week, and the talk did what talk does. By Monday, Sarah Pierce had it that Carter meant to marry her by harvest. By Tuesday, the widow Ledbetter had it that Brooks had struck him at the dance. By Wednesday, 3 separate people had asked Silas Doyle whether it was true that Miss Clara was leaving, and Silas had said, "Ask me again when I ain't holding a hammer," which everybody understood to mean yes. And on Wednesday afternoon, Honoria Brooks found Clara alone in the still room and closed the door. "Sit down, Miss Whitmore. I am 71 years old, and I have not the strength to look up at you. Sit." Clara sat. "You have made my nephew a spectacle," Honoria said. "I would like to know your intentions." "I have no intentions toward your nephew, ma'am." "Don't be stupid, girl. You've had intentions toward my nephew since you were 19, and everyone in this house, but the man himself has known it, and if you tell me otherwise, I shall think less of your honesty than I currently think of your judgment." Honoria set down her fan. "Mr. Carter, is it serious?" He has been kind to me. That is not what I asked. No, ma'am, it isn't. Clara met her eyes. But it's my answer. Something almost like approval crossed the old woman's face and was put away again. Then I shall tell you a thing, Honoria said, and you will understand at last that this family has never treated you carelessly, whatever you may have persuaded yourself. Ma'am. In the spring of 1813, a man came to this house and asked my nephew's permission to court you. Clara did not move. His name was Ellis Pruitt. He kept the school at Culpeper, and he was a decent, plain, sober young man with 200 a year and a mother, and he sat in that parlor for 40 minutes, with his hat in his hands. Honoria's voice was crisp, and entirely without malice, which was the thing that made it unsurvivable. Nathaniel told him you were not available, that your place was here, that the estate could not spare you. The clock on the still-room shelf went on ticking, and that, Honoria said, is a great compliment whether or not you choose to see it. Men do not fight to keep what they do not value. Where is he now? Clara said. I beg your pardon. Mr. Pruitt, where is he now? Good heavens, I've no idea. Married, I should think. Ohio, perhaps. Honoria picked up her fan again. It is 13 years ago, child. 9, Clara said. It's 9 years ago. It was the spring after the flood. I remember that spring because the mill wheel cracked, and I sat up with the accounts and I thought... She stopped. Miss Whitmore. I thought nobody had ever come, Clara said. That's what I thought. For 9 years. I thought I was a woman nobody had ever come for. Honoria's fan stopped moving. He never told me, Clara said. He never told me a man came to the door and asked for me. I was protecting the estate. Yes, ma'am. Clara stood up. Her legs held. She was distantly surprised by that. I know exactly what he was protecting. She found him in the barn lot with the Hendricks papers under his arm. Clara, good listen. I need the survey of the west parcel. Hendricks wants the boundaries wrote out fresh before Thursday, and I can't find Ellis Pruitt. Nathaniel stopped. Everything about him stopped. His face, his hands, the papers. And Clara watched him do it and understood in that half-second that he had not forgotten. Not for a day. Who told you that? Does it matter? Clara, 9 years. Her voice cracked for the first time in 12 years, and she hated it. 9 years I have gone to bed in this house believing that not one man on this earth had ever thought me worth walking up a road for. Not one. And you knew. You knew there was a man in your parlor with his hat in his hands, and you sent him down the road, and you came into supper, and you ate your supper, and you asked me about the seed money. He wasn't good enough for you. You didn't ask me. It came out of her at full volume, and it rang off the barn wall, and 2 men in the far lot dropped what they were holding. You didn't ask me, Clara said, quieter, shaking. You never asked me. You made a decision about the whole shape of my life in 40 minutes in a parlor, and you never once thought there was a question in it. Clara, he was a schoolmaster with 200 a year. I had nothing, Nathaniel. She spread her hands. I had a dead mother, and a dead father, and a mule. 200 a year, and a man who came to the door was more than anybody on this earth had ever offered me, and you decided I wouldn't want it. Without asking. Because you needed the seed money written out. That is not? Then why didn't you tell me? Silence. Why? Clara said. Did you never tell me? And Nathaniel Brooks, who had commanded 90 men at Bladensburg, and stood in a bank in Norfolk at 24, and told them to their faces he would pay his father's debts to the last cent, could not produce one word. Because you knew what I'd say, Clara said. You knew if I'd been asked I might have gone. And then who'd have found Amos Pell? She walked past him. Clara, the West Parcel Survey is in the tin box behind the tax receipts, she said. It always has been. You've never once opened that drawer. That night, she didn't sleep in the pantry. She walked the 4 miles to the Doyle place instead, because Annie's fever had come up on Monday, and Clara had been going every evening, and she sat in that cabin with a basin and a cloth until midnight, the way she had sat in a dozen cabins on that hill for 12 years. You look worse'n me, Annie said. That's not a race you want to win. Miss Clara. The girl caught her wrist. We named her. Did you? Clara Bess Doyle. Annie's chin came up half defiant, like she expected to be argued with. Ain't nobody's business but ours. Clara sat down on the edge of the bed. Her hand went over her mouth. Now don't, Annie said, alarmed. Don't you do that. You ain't never done that in your whole life, don't you start now. I'm all right. You ain't. I'm all right, Annie. Clara wiped her face with the back of her wrist and laughed at herself wetly. 12 years I've been on this hill, and nobody's ever put my name on anything. Silas walked her back at midnight with a lantern and said nothing for 2 miles, and then said, Ma'am, I got to ask you something, and I ain't got the manners for it. Ask. If you was to go, do we go with you? Clara stopped walking. There's 11 families on that west parcel, Silas said. Some of 'em been there since before Mr. Josiah died. And every last one of 'em knows who writes the letters, and who splits the seed, and who come out in the rain when the Kelso boy busted his leg. He turned the lantern in his hand. Ain't a man on that ground works for Mr. Brooks. We work for you. He just don't know it. Silas. I ain't saying it to make trouble. I know why you're saying it. So. He cleared his throat. Do we? And Clara Whitmore stood in the dark on a road she'd walked 10,000 times and felt the whole weight of it settle onto her shoulders. 11 families, 40-odd souls, an old woman in the kitchen, and a girl with a baby named after her, and understood for the first time in her life that she was not a person who could simply leave. Silas, she said, I don't know. Well, he started walking again. That's more'n he'd have said. William Carter came up the hill Sunday afternoon in a clean coat and did the thing properly because he was that kind of man. He knocked at the front door. Bess opened it, took one look, and hollered up the stairs in a voice they heard at the mill. Miss Clara, there is a gentleman at the front door, and he has combed his hair. Bess. I ain't yellin' loud enough. Miss Clara. I heard you. Bess, the county heard you. Clara came down the stairs with her hair half-pinned and her face on fire, and William Carter stood on the front step of the Brooks house with his hat in his hands and said, Ma'am, I'd like to ask you something, and I'd like to ask it out here where everybody can see me do it, because I've heard how things get said around here, and I'd rather they got said right. Mr. Carter, I'd like your permission to court you. Somewhere behind Clara in the hall. A lamp base rattled where Nathaniel Brooks had put his hand out to steady himself against a table. My permission, Clara repeated. Yes, ma'am. You haven't asked anyone else. Who would I ask? William looked honestly puzzled. You're 27, and you run 4,000 acres. Ain't a man alive got standing to answer for you. Clara had to look away. Now I ain't a rich man, he went on. And I'll say the whole of it standin' here, so there's no discoverin' it later. I got 260 acres and a house that leaks at the north end. I got a boy of 9 name of Thomas, whose mama died of the fever in 1815, and who don't talk much to strangers. I got a bad shoulder off Chalmette that tells me when it's fixin' to rain. And I got 60 acres of corn burnin' up out there because I don't know one damn thing about hay contracts. Mr. Carter. I ain't finished, ma'am, and I'm liable to lose my nerve. He turned the hat once. I ain't askin' you to come save my place. I want that said plain, because I reckon you've had a belly full of men who wanted savin'. If you never looked at another ledger in your life, it wouldn't change one word of this. Then what are you asking? I'm askin' if I can call on you Sundays, William said, and take you places where you get to sit down. Clara Whitmore put her hand over her mouth for the second time in a week. Take your time, he said. I ain't going anywhere. Fella my age has run out of places to be in a hurry to. Sunday, Clara said. Ma'am, ask me again next Sunday. Her voice was not steady. I'm not saying no. I want you to understand, I am not saying no. I'm saying that I have been somebody's convenience for 12 years, and if I say yes to you today, I'll be saying it out of temper at another man, and you deserve considerably better than to be a thing I did because I was angry. William Carter looked at her for a long moment. Then he put his hat on. Miss Whitmore, he said, that is the finest answer anybody's give me in 10 years. He got as far as the gate before he turned around. For what it's worth, he called back. I'd have thought less of you if you'd said yes. And Clara Whitmore laughed out loud on the front step of that house, in full view of the windows and inside the hall. Nathaniel Brooks stood absolutely still, with his hand on a table, and listened to a sound he had never in 12 years been able to make her make. Thursday he rode to town to renew the Hendricks note. He went in easy. He'd been in that office 30 times. Jacob Hendricks had held paper on the Brooks place since before the war, and there was a routine to it: the coffee, the weather, the signing, the handshake. Hendricks didn't offer coffee. Sit down, Nathaniel. I'll stand, Sit down. He sat. I've had a letter, Hendricks said, from Ruffin and Bland in Richmond, attorneys. They're settling the last of your father's estate. That's been 8 years settling. It has, and they've found something in it. Hendricks pushed a paper across the desk. Read that. Nathaniel read it. Then he read it again. This is wrong, he said. It's a certified abstract son. This is wrong, Jacob. The west parcel is Brooks land. It's been Brooks land since 1791. My grandfather cleared it. Your father conveyed it in 1811. To who? Hendricks looked at him steadily. You'll want to read the second page. Nathaniel turned the page. The office was very quiet. 200 acres, Hendricks said, and the mill race, deeded to Miss Clara Whitmore in 1811, in consideration of debts owed to her late father, executed and witnessed and never recorded. It wants only her signature to go on the books. And Nathaniel, the reason I sent for you, the reason I am not offering you coffee, is that you have had that parcel pledged against this note for 6 years. I didn't know. I believe you. Jacob, I swear before God, I did not know. I said I believe you. Hendricks took his spectacles off. But you understand what it means. If that woman signs and records the security under your note is a defect, and this bank has to call it. $1,400 in full, and I cannot give you a day past September. Nathaniel sat with the paper in his hands. How long have they known? He said. Ruffin wrote her in June. June. 3 weeks back near enough. She's known for 3 weeks. She's known for 3 weeks. Hendricks agreed. And if you want my opinion, which you ain't asked for and ain't going to like. He leaned back. A woman who's known for 3 weeks and hasn't signed is a woman who is waiting on something. And you'd best figure out what it is before somebody else offers it to her. He rode the 8 miles home at a walk, because he could not have said afterward whether he rode at all. 18 and 11. She'd been 16 years old. His father had sat down 4 months before he died and quietly deeded her. The best ground on the place. The parcel with the water on it. The parcel everything else drank from and had told nobody and had died, and the paper had gone into a drawer in Richmond for 8 years. Your daddy was a good man, and I owe him more than I paid him. His father had known. His father had looked at a 15-year-old girl with a mule and a Bible and understood in one afternoon the thing his son had failed to understand in 12 years, that she was not a charity, that she was owed, and she'd been sleeping on a pallet in the pantry. She was on the front porch when he came up the hill, and she wasn't alone. William Carter's gray horse was at the rail, and the two of them were sitting on the steps with the survey book open across their knees, and Clara was saying, "No, look, your north line runs here, which means your whole east slope drains onto Pierce's, which means you've been growing corn in a place that can't hold water since April. And if you'd put it in hay in March, you'd have, Miss Whitmore, you are ruining my afternoon." You asked. I did ask. I regret it deeply. Nathaniel got down off the horse. Clara looked up, and whatever was on his face made her close the survey book. Mr. Carter, Nathaniel said, I'd be obliged for a word with Miss Whitmore. William looked at Clara, not at Nathaniel, at Clara. He waited. It's all right, she said. He stood and got his hat and said, Ma'am, Sunday, and rode down the hill without hurrying, and Nathaniel Brooks watched a man he wanted very badly to hate decline to give him the smallest excuse. Then he came up the steps and held out the abstract. Clara didn't take it. You've been to Hendricks, she said. Yes. I thought you might have today. Clara. His voice had gone hoarse. Is it true? She stood up. She smoothed her apron down with both hands, the way she'd done 10,000 times before walking into a room where something hard was waiting. "Yes," she said. "It's true. Your father deeded me the west parcel in the fall of 1811, 4 months before he died. 200 acres and the mill race. Ruffin and Bland wrote me the 9th of June. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You've had that letter 3 weeks, and you have stood in my office every day of it. I have. And you never said one word. No. Why?" And Clara Whitmore looked at the man she had loved since she was 19 years old and answered him honestly, which was the only cruelty she had ever committed in her life. "Because I wanted to see," she said. "If you'd ever ask me a single question, I didn't have to answer." She put her hand out then and took the abstract from him and folded it once. "It isn't signed," she said. "It's been 3 weeks and it isn't signed, and there's 11 families on that ground and a note due in September, and you might want to sit down and think about what all that means. You've got until harvest to think about it." She went to the door. "Clara, please." "Supper's at 7, Clara said. "Miss Rowe likes the ham." He got up at 3 o'clock Monday morning and went down to light the kitchen fire. He had never done it in his life. It took him 40 minutes, 2 burned fingers, and most of a week's kindling. And when Bess came in at 5 to a smoking hearth and a man sitting on the floor in front of it, with his sleeves black to the elbow, she stopped in the doorway and said, "Lord have mercy." "It's lit." "It's lit," Bess agreed. "It's also fixin' to burn my chimney out. Move." He moved. She fixed it in 4 minutes without appearing to look at it. "Bess. What would I have paid her?" "Beg pardon." "If she'd been a man." He was still on the floor. "If a man had walked onto this place in 1807 and done what she's done, the books, the contracts, the mill, the water, the men, what would I have paid him?" Bess put the kettle on and thought about it because she was not a woman who answered a serious question fast. "Overseer gets 300, she said. "That's your ordinary overseer. Fella who keeps books gets another 2. That's 500 a year. That's a man who does what he's told. She ain't never once been told." Bess turned around. "You'd have made him a partner, Mr. Nathaniel. That's the truth, and you know it. A man done what she done, you'd have give him a third of the place by 1812 and called yourself lucky." Nathaniel Brooks put his head back against the wall. 12 years, he said. 12 years. At 500, that's $6,000. "That's 500, Bess said. "You said yourself it ain't 500. He came to Clara in the office at 7 with a bank draft and set it on the ledger in front of her. She looked at it for a long moment. "You've written this for $4,000. It's what the mill cleared last season. It's what I have. There's more coming, and you'll have that too. Nathaniel. And I've written to Hendricks to open an account in your name, in your own name, not the estate's, so that nobody can—" "Nathaniel." She picked up the draft. She held it out to him. "Take it back. Clara, in God's name, will you let me do one thing?" "You want to do one thing?" Her voice didn't rise. It never rose. That was the thing he had begun to understand was worse. "Do you know what my mother's name was?" He stopped. "My mother," Clara said. 12 years in your house. What was her name?" The clock on the mantel went 11 ticks. "I don't know," he said. "No." "Clara." "Ellen," she said. "Ellen Whitmore. She died the 14th of March in 1807, and I have never once said her name out loud in this house because there was never anybody in it to say it to." She put the draft down on the desk between them. "You cannot buy back 12 years by the pound, Nathaniel. There's no rate for it. If you hand me $4,000 this morning, what you've bought is a receipt, and I don't want a receipt. And the worst of it is, you think I ought to be grateful. I don't think you ought to be grateful. You're standing there waiting for it." And he was. He heard it in himself the second she said it. That small, warm, obscene little expectation, sitting at the back of his throat, waiting for her face to change. He sat down heavily in the chair across from her in his own office, in the seat where the tenant sat. "Then tell me what to do," he said. "No, sir." "Clara." No. She opened the ledger. That's the last thing I do for you. I have thought for you for 12 years, and I am not going to stand here and think up your apology for you as well. He was still sitting there when she left the room. William Carter came Sunday with his boy. That was the part nobody expected. He rode up the hill with a 9-year-old on a pony behind him, and Bess opened the door and said, "Well, now there's 2 of 'em combed." And Thomas Carter looked at the floor and did not say a word. "He don't talk to strangers," William said. "I told you that." "You did." "I figured if he's going to be part of the asking, he ought to be here for it." Clara crouched down in the doorway, which put her below the boy's eye line, which she had learned from 12 years of frightened tenant children. "Thomas." "Nothing." "Your daddy tells me you don't talk much to folks you don't know." "Nothing." "That's all right. I didn't talk for 4 months when I was 15. She said it plainly, no sadness laid over it. "My mama died in the March, and my daddy died in the April, and I came here in the June, and I did not say one word to anybody in this house till the fall. Bess used to leave biscuits by the door and go away so I could get 'em." The boy's eyes came up. "Did you talk after?" he said. "Eventually." "What made you—" "Somebody asked me a question they actually wanted the answer to," Clara said. "It's rare. You'll know it when it happens." William Carter turned his hat all the way around in his hands and didn't say anything at all for a moment. Then he said, "Miss Whitmore, it's Sunday." "It is." "I said I'd ask again." "You did." "I'm askin'." And Clara Whitmore stood up in the doorway of the house she had saved and said, "Yes. Yes. Yes, Mr. Carter, you may call on me Sundays." Her hands were shaking, and she let them. "I'll thank you not to look so surprised you asked twice." "I ain't surprised," William said. "I'm scared to death," which looks similar. Behind them in the hall, a door closed very quietly, and neither of them turned around. Abigail Rowe found Nathaniel in the study an hour later and shut the door behind her, which was not a thing a young lady of Richmond did. "I'd like to release you," she said. "Miss Rowe." "There's nothing to release you from, which is my point. There's no engagement. There's my father's bank and your 4,000 acres and my Aunt Honoria." "Your aunt. I've started thinking of her as mine. That's how long I've been here. And there is not one word of any of it that has ever come from you or from me." She sat down without being asked. "I'm 22, and I'm not a fool, Mr. Brooks, whatever it suits everyone to think." "I've never treated you as a fool. No. You've treated me as furniture, which you appear to do to women generally, and I've decided not to take it personally." He laughed once badly. "May I say a thing?" Abigail said. "That will be unpleasant. I can't imagine why you'd stop now, when she refused you at the dance." Abigail folded her hands. "Everyone was looking at her. I was looking at you. And I have never in my life seen a man's face do what your face did, and I thought, well, that's it then. That's what it's supposed to look like. And nobody is ever going to look at me that way across a Richmond drawing room, and I had better find out now, rather than at 40. Miss Rowe, I'd like to be her friend if she'll have me, which she probably won't." Abigail stood. "Also, I should tell you that your aunt has been writing letters." He went cold. "What letters?" "I don't know. She writes them in the mornings and sends Tobias with them, and she doesn't leave them out." Abigail got to the door. "But she's stopped talking about the wedding. Mr. Brooks, and a woman like your aunt doesn't stop talking about a thing because she's given it up. She stops because she's found a better way to get it." Honoria Brooks sent for Clara on Tuesday and had the tea poured before she came in, which was in itself a declaration. "Sit down." "Ma'am, $2,000, Honoria said, "and a house in Richmond." Clara set the cup down without drinking from it. "I'll say it again in case you think I'm being delicate. You will sign a quitclaim relinquishing the west parcel to my nephew. You will accept $2,000 and the house on Grace Street, which is mine, which is not entailed, and which I may dispose of as I please. And you will go." "No." "Consider it for a moment." "I've considered it, ma'am. It took no time at all." Clara's voice was perfectly level. "There are 11 families on that parcel. $2,000 doesn't feed them, and a house on Gray Street doesn't hold their leases. And if I sign that ground back to a man who has it pledged to a bank, then the first bad year that comes, every one of them is off it by Christmas, and there is nothing on God's earth I could do to stop it. You presume a great deal about your own importance. I presume nothing. I've read the leases. I wrote 9 of them. Honoria set down her cup. Then let me be plainer, she said. You are 27. You have no family, no fortune of your own, and a reputation that has survived this long only because nobody had cause to look at it. If you stay in this house another year, people will begin to ask what precisely you are to my nephew. And when they ask Miss Whitmore, they will not be kind, and they will not be quiet, and I will not be able to help you. Is that a warning, ma'am, or is it a plan? Honoria Brooks smiled thinly and did not answer. It was around at the church by Sunday. The widow Ledbetter had it first, which surprised nobody, and she had it in the form of a question which was, how the worst things always traveled in that county. Not did you hear? But now I wonder, she said to Sarah Pierce on the steps in a carrying voice, why a man would deed the best 200 acres on his place to a girl of 16 and never tell his own son. Debts, they say, owed to her father. That's what they say. The widow adjusted her gloves. My mother had a girl in her house once that everybody said was a ward. She favored her father something remarkable about the mouth. Silas Doyle heard it at the horse rail and went white, and Bess heard it at the well an hour later, and by Sunday dinner, it was in every kitchen from the Ford to the mill that Clara Whitmore was Josiah Brooks's natural daughter. That the deed was hush money. That the old man had put a child on some poor woman and salved himself with 200 acres. That Nathaniel Brooks had been telling the plain truth for 12 years and calling her sister because she was one. Silas told her himself at the mill because he'd be damned if she was going to hear it from somebody who'd enjoy it. She listened all the way through without moving. Miss Clara. Say it again. Ma'am. Say the whole of it again, Silas, because I want to be sure I understood it. He said it again. When he was done, Clara Whitmore turned around and put both hands flat on the mill rail and stood there for what he later said was the longest half-minute of his life. 12 years, she said, he has called me a sister, and now the county has decided he was right. Ain't nobody with sense believes it. Silas. Ma'am. Do you believe it? No, ma'am. Look at me and say it. He looked at her and said it, and she believed him, and that was the only thing that kept her upright. Where's my mother in this? She said. Have you thought about that? Every one of them talking has decided my mother was a whore, and she's been dead 12 years, and she can't say a word, and she was the best woman I ever knew, and she washed for 11 people to keep me in shoes. Her voice finally broke not up, but down into something low and terrible. They're not talking about me at all, are they? They're talking about her. Miss Clara. I want the ledger, Clara said. Ma'am, the one from 18 and 11. It's in the tin box in the office. Go get it and bring it to my room, and do not tell anyone you did it. William Carter rode up that evening, and he did not come to the front door, and he did not comb his hair. She met him at the gate. You've heard it, she said. I have. And I've come to ask you something, and I want you to know before I ask it that my answer don't change one way or the other. He didn't get off the horse, which she understood he was giving her the road in case she wanted it. Do you know? No, Clara said. All right. I don't know, Mr. Carter. That's the thing I have been sitting with since 2 o'clock. I never asked why Josiah Brooks came out to our place. I was 15, and my daddy was in the ground 4 days, and a rich man came up the road and said, "Come home with me." And I went. And in 12 years, it never once crossed my mind to wonder why me. Her hands were locked together. And now I've been wondering it for 6 hours, and I cannot make it stop. Then we'll find out. And if it's true, then it's true, William said. And it don't touch you because you didn't do it, and I've buried a wife and fought a war, and I have got no patience left for punishing folks for what was done before they could walk. It touches whether I can ever... She stopped. William Carter waited. It touches whether I can ever be anything but his sister, Clara said. And I want you to understand that I said that out loud to you, and that I'm ashamed of it, and that I'm not going to take it back." I was quiet a moment. Then he said, "Ma'am, I'd have thought less of you if you had." Nathaniel went at his aunt at 9 o'clock that night and did not knock. "Was it you?" "Sit down. Was it you?" Honoria closed her book. "I have said nothing to anybody. That is not a natural inference from a document lodged with a bank." "You said it to the widow Ledbetter." "I said it to Mrs. Pierce, in fact, and I said it as a question, and I said it because it is what every soul in this county is going to think the moment that deed is recorded, and better, they think it now quietly than at a courthouse in September." She looked up at him. "I have not lied, Nathaniel. You have called my father an adulterer, and that woman his bastard, and you did it in a churchyard. I have made it impossible for you to marry her." Honoria's voice went flat and hard. "Yes, that was the object. I have been watching you these 3 weeks, and I know precisely where this was going, and I would sooner see the whole 4,000 acres under water than see a Brooks marry a penniless ward out of pity dressed up as passion. And if the only tool left to me was an ugly one, then I used an ugly one, and I will answer for it to God and not to you." Nathaniel stood there. "You've killed it," he said. "Do you understand that? Not the marriage, her. Every day she has left in this county, she'll walk into rooms that go quiet. She'll survive it. She'll survive it. Women survive worse, and she is stronger than you have ever bothered to notice." Honoria opened her book again. "That is the one thing you and I agree upon." Bess came into the office at midnight without knocking, which she had done twice in 29 years. She had a tin box under her arm. "Sit down, both of you," she said, because Clara was already there. "Bess." I said sit. They sat. "Now." Bess set the box on the desk. "I have kept my mouth shut on this 11 years, because I was told to, and the man who told me is dead. And I have decided he don't get to keep me quiet while they say what they're saying about Ellen Whitmore in front of a church." Clara's hands closed on the arms of the chair. "Your daddy," Bess said, "and Mr. Josiah was partners in that mill. That's not my father was a tenant. Your daddy was a partner, child, in 1801 when they cut that race. Amos Whitmore surveyed the water and dug half that ditch with his own hands, and he had a third of that mill on paper." Bess's jaw was tight. "Then come the bad year of 1804, and your daddy couldn't meet his part of the note, and Mr. Josiah bought him out. Legal. Cheap. $900 for a third of a mill that was making $1,200 a year, and Amos Whitmore signed it because he had a wife and a baby girl, and no choice, and he went from partner to tenant in one afternoon, and he never was the same man again." Nathaniel had gone gray. "My father wouldn't—" "Your father did," Bess said. "And then he spent 14 years being sorry about it, which is a thing rich men do instead of giving it back." She opened the tin box. "Till the end." She took out a folded paper soft at the creases and held it out to Clara. "He wrote that the November before he died. Give it to me sealed, and said if the lawyers ever come askin', that goes with the deed. Then he went and died in the February, and them lawyers took 8 years, and I ain't heard a word from a lawyer to this day." Clara opened it. She read it twice, and then she read one line of it out loud, and her voice did not hold. "I took the water from a better man than me," she read, "and I have made money on it every year since, and there is no way left to pay Amos Whitmore, so I am paying his girl. Let no one say this is charity. It is a debt, and it is late, and it is short." Nobody said anything. "There's more," Bess said. "Read him the rest." Clara's mouth moved before the sound came. "I have not told my son. He is 24 and proud, and he would take it as an accusation against me, which it is." She stopped, started again. "Tell her I am sorry I did not do it while her father was alive to see it. Tell her I never once thought of her as anything but Amos Whitmore's daughter, which is a finer thing to be than mine." The word sat there in the room. "Say it plain, Bess," Clara said. "I need it plain." "You ain't his," Bess said. "You ain't no more his than I am. Your mama never laid eyes on Josiah Brooks but 4 times in her life, and 3 of 'em was at church, and I was in that house the year you was born, and I would know, and anybody says different can come say it to me." Clara Whitmore put her face in her hands and cried for the first time in 12 years, and it was not a graceful thing, and it went on for some while. Nathaniel got up out of his chair to go to her. Bess put a hand on his chest. "No," Bess said. "Bess, not you. Not tonight." She did not move her hand. "You had 12 years to cross that floor, Mr. Nathaniel. You don't get to do it now, 'cause it's easy." He rode to town Wednesday morning to tell Hendricks he'd have the note paid by September if he had to sell the mill to do it. Hendricks let him get all the way through it. Then he said, "Nathaniel, I don't hold the note." "You've held that note 6 years. I sold it Monday." The room tilted. "To who?" "Party in Richmond through Ruffin and Bland." Hendricks looked genuinely sick. "Paid face and a premium. I did not want to do it, and I have no grounds to refuse a lawful assignment, and I'll tell you the rest of it because you'll have it in the mail. Friday, regardless, the new holder has called the note. Not September. 30 days. 30. $1,400 the 15th of August. The hay contract doesn't deliver till October. I know it. The corn's burnt. There's no cash in that place till the hay goes down the river. Jacob, there is not $1,400 in the state of Virginia. I can lay hand on by August. I know it, Hendricks said. So does whoever bought it. Nathaniel put both hands on the desk. Who bought my note? I ain't at liberty. Jacob. And Jacob Hendricks, who had known him since he was in short pants, took off his spectacles and said, Son, who in this world wants that woman off your land bad enough to spend $1,400 doing it? He didn't remember the ride home. He found Honoria on the porch, and he had the reins still in his hand when he said, You bought the note. I did. You bought my note. I bought a lawful instrument at a fair premium, which any person may do. She did not so much as set down her needlework. And on the 15th of August, when it cannot be paid, I will take the security. That is the West parcel. Which means that whether that girl signs her deed or does not sign it, the ground goes to a Brooks in the end, and she will find that her 200 acres have become a lawsuit in Richmond that will last 9 years and cost her $4,000 she does not have. You would ruin this place to get your way. I would hold this place. It is not the same thing, and you have never once been able to tell the difference. Now she looked up. I am 71, Nathaniel. Your father built this out of nothing, and he died owing $11,000, and I sat in that Norfolk bank beside you when you were 4 and 20 and swore to pay it, and I have watched you pay it, and I will not stand by while you hand the water rights to a woman who will marry a man across the North Line and take them with her. She would not have to intend it. Honoria's needle went back in. Land does not care what anybody intended. It goes where the paper says. That is the whole of the history of every family in this county, and you are the only man in it romantic enough to think otherwise. He stood there a long moment. Then he said, You've made one mistake. Have I? You've made it a fight about the ground. Nathaniel dropped the reins. It was never about the ground. And now she's got until August to sit up with a survey book and a ledger and figure out how to beat you and Aunt Honoria. You have not the first idea what that woman can do with a ledger and a deadline. She was in the office at 11 that night with 4 books open and Silas standing across the desk. Say the number again, she said. 300 ton of hay at $11, $3,300. Delivered at the river by October. Yes'm. What's cut? 110 ton in the barn. Another 60 on the ground curin'. Rest ain't cut. How fast can Ridley take a partial? Silas blinked. Ma'am, the contract says 300 tons by October the 1st. It does not say I can't deliver 170 tons in August and ask for pay on what's landed. She was writing while she talked. $11 a ton on 170 is $1,870. The note is $1,400. Miss Clara, the road to the Landon won't carry. Then we go at night when it's cool, and we go with 6 wagons instead of 3, and we borrow 2 from Pierce, who owes me for the Kelso boy's leg, and knows it. She didn't look up. How many men? 22 if I pull the ditch crew. Pull them. That's 4 days cuttin' at least, ma'am, if it don't rain. It won't rain. Silas, it hasn't rained since June. It's June. That's the only piece of luck we've got, and I intend to use it. She finally looked up. Will they do it? Silas Doyle turned his hat over once. Ma'am, they'd carry it to Richmond on their backs, he said, and you know it, and I'd take it kindly if you'd stop askin'. Nathaniel was standing in the doorway. Neither of them had heard him come. How long have you been there? Clara said. Long enough. He came in. Ridley won't take a partial delivery. Ridley will take anything he can put under a cavalry horse in a drought year, and you'd know that if you'd read his letter, which is in the second drawer, where it has been since April. Clara. What? Let me pay it. With what? I'll sell the mill. She put the pen down. Say that again. I'll sell the mill. He said it steadily. Marbury's wanted it 4 years. He'll give $3,000 for it inside a fortnight. That clears the note. It clears the pledge. The west parcel comes free and clean, and you record your deed, and there's not one thing my aunt or any court in Richmond can do about it. That mill is 1/3 of this place. Yes. Without the mill, you're a corn farmer in a county that can't grow corn. Yes. You'd have to sell the east acreage inside 2 years. Probably. Nathaniel. Clara, I know what it costs. His voice cracked finally for the first time in the whole of it. I have been sitting up nights with that number for a week. I know exactly what it costs, and I am telling you that I would rather be a poor man on 900 acres than a rich one who has to explain to himself for the rest of his life why he let his aunt take your father's water off you a second time. The clock ticked. No, Clara said. Why? Because it's the same thing. She stood up. Don't you see that it's the same thing? 12 years you decided what my life would be without asking, and now you'd sell a mill to fix it, without asking. And either way, I'm a woman standing in a room while a man arranges her. Her hands were flat on the desk. You are not going to save me, Nathaniel Brooks. You had 12 years to see me, and you can't buy the difference for $3,000 in a fortnight. Then what do you want from me? Nothing, Clara said. That's what you can't stand. The wagons rolled the 1st of August, and they rolled at night, and they rolled for 9 days. She was at the landing, every one of them. Nathaniel was at the landing, every one of them too, in the traces in the dust, loading with the men, and there was some talk about that in the county as well. A man of his acreage doing that work in front of his own hands. And Silas Doyle put a stop to most of it by telling anybody who raised it that they could come lift a bale themselves and see how funny it was. On the 9th day, they landed the 171st ton. Colonel Ridley's agent counted it twice, wrote a draft for $1,881, and made it out because Clara handed him the contract and pointed at the signature line and said there to Miss C. Whitmore. Silas Doyle sat down on a bale and laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. Nathaniel took the note off his aunt on the 14th of August in the front hall in front of Bess and Silas and Abigail Rowe and 11 tenant men who had walked up the hill for no stated reason and stood on the porch with their hats in their hands. He counted out $1,400. Where did you get it? Honoria said. You know where I got it. She paid your note. She paid her note, Nathaniel said. It was her ground pledged under it. It has been her ground since she was 16 years old, and there is not $1 of this place that isn't hers twice over. And you can have your $1,400, Aunt Honoria, and you can have the assignment canceled, and then you can pack. Honoria Brooks stood absolutely still. And one thing more, Nathaniel said. Before you go, you'll come to the courthouse Saturday. I will not. You will come to the courthouse Saturday, he said, and you will stand there while I read out my father's letter in front of the county, and you will not say one word, and when it is done, every soul in this district will know that you stood there and heard it. That's the price. Take it, or I'll put it in the Richmond papers with your name on it. Saturday they recorded the deed. He read the letter out on the courthouse steps, and Bess stood on one side of him and swore to it plain, and Honoria Brooks stood on the other in her traveling clothes, with her chin up, and said nothing at all. And the widow Ledbetter did not come, and everybody noticed that she did not come. Then the clerk entered Whitmore Clara, 200 acres and mill race into the county book, and Silas Doyle let out a whoop that scared 3 horses. And Nathaniel Brooks turned around on those steps in front of 200 people and said, Clara. She was standing at the bottom with her copy of the deed folded in her hand. There's a thing I have to say, and I'd rather say it here where I can't take it back. He came down 2 steps. 12 years I called you a sister, and I want to tell this county why, because it wasn't kindness and it wasn't blindness. It was convenient. A sister stays. A sister doesn't get asked what she wants, and doesn't get courted, and doesn't leave, and every single time I said that word, I was locking a door and telling myself it was a compliment. His voice was shaking. I sent Ellis Pruitt down that road and I never told her. I let her sleep 4 nights on a pantry floor in my own house. I stood in front of my foreman and called what she does the small things. And I'd stand here till dark listing it, except that I finally understand that listing it is just one more thing I'm asking her to sit through. He got to the bottom step, so I'll say the one thing, and then I'll be quiet. I love you. Not since the fair, since I was 4 and 20, and you walked into my study at 2 in the morning with the proof in your hand, and I have known it every day since, and I kept my mouth shut for 12 years because I was more afraid of losing what you did for me than I was of losing you. He put his hat over his heart, which he had never once done in his life. That's all of it. I'm not asking. I've lost the right to ask. I just wanted it said out loud in front of the same people who heard me say the other thing. Nobody moved. 200 people, and not one of them moved. Clara Whitmore stood there with the deed in her hand. Then she came up 1 step so she could be heard, and she said it steady and clear, and without one drop of cruelty in it, which was what made it land the way it did. You did not lose me when another man wanted me, she said. You lost me every day you failed to see me. Clara, 12 years Nathaniel, and every one of those days you could have looked up. It didn't want courage, and it didn't want a courthouse and 200 witnesses. It wanted you to ask me one question. She was crying and her voice never wavered. And you're asking now, and I believe you. That's the terrible part. I believe every word you just said, and it has come 9 years too late, and there is a girl of 19 sitting up with your ruined books who is never going to get it. She stepped back down. I'm going, she said. Where? My own ground, Clara said. Mr. Doyle's got the far cabin standing. It's mine. It's got my name in the county book as of 11 o'clock this morning. And tonight I am going to sleep in a house that cannot be taken back. Clara, please. And she stopped, and she looked back at him one time. You want to know what to do, she said. Here it is, and it's the last thing I'll ever tell you. Don't come after me. Then Clara Whitmore walked down through 200 people who parted for her without being asked, and got up on a wagon beside Silas Doyle, and rode out of that town, and did not look back once. The far cabin had 2 rooms, a stove that smoked, and a door that didn't hang true. Clara Whitmore slept 11 hours in it. She woke at 2 in the afternoon, which she had not done since she was 14 years old, and lay there listening to the wrongness of it. No bell, no kitchen, nobody's breakfast. And then she got up and stood in the middle of her own floor in her stocking feet, and put both hands flat against the wall, the way she had on the landing that first morning. Except this time, she was not counting seconds until she could breathe. You crying in there? Bess called from the yard. No. You are. I am not crying, Bess, I am standing. Well, stand out here, then I brung your kettle and my back's give out. Bess had come with a wagon, a kettle, 2 chairs, and her own trunk, and she set the trunk down in the second room without asking anybody, and when Clara opened her mouth, Bess said, Don't. Bess, 29 years in that house, and I have got the right to spend the rest of 'em where I please, and you have got a stove that smokes, and no more sense about a stove than a hen. She sat down. Now hush and put the water on. He did not come. That was the thing the county could not get over. They waited for it. The whole district sat up for a week, the way you sit up for a storm, and Nathaniel Brooks did not ride down that road, and did not send a letter, and did not stand at the far end of the west parcel with his hat in his hands. And by the second Sunday, the widow Ledbetter was telling people he'd given her up entirely, which everybody who had been on those courthouse steps knew was a lie, and repeated anyway. Silas Doyle put it best at the mill to a man who asked. He ain't give her up, Silas said. She told him not to come. He's doing the only thing she's ever asked him for in 12 years, and he's doing it every day, and it's costing him more than the mill would. The mill got mentioned because the mill went the last week of August. Marbury paid $3,100 for it, and Nathaniel Brooks signed the papers on a Tuesday morning with Hendricks witnessing, and Hendricks said, "Son, you understand what you've done." "I do." "You're a 900-acre man now, in a drought county." "I'm aware." "Then what in God's name—" "There's 11 leases on that west parcel," Nathaniel said. "Written by Clara, signed by my father, and every one of them runs at the will of the owner of the mill race. If Marbury bought that mill off me in 5 years or 10, or off my son, whoever held it could shut the water and take that ground back inside a season, and she couldn't stop it." He put the pen down. "So I sold it with the race severed. The water goes with the parcel. It goes with her. Recorded this morning, and there's not a court in Virginia can pull it apart again." Hendricks sat back. "That's the whole value of it," he said. "The race is the value. You've sold a mill without the water for $3,000 when it's worth $5. Yes. You have given away $2,000, Nathaniel." "I've paid $2,000, Nathaniel said, "and it's late and it's short." Hendricks looked at him a long moment. "Does she know?" "No." "You going to tell her?" "No." "Then how in the world—" "Jacob," Nathaniel said, "if I tell her it's a gift, and a gift can be taken back." He picked up his hat. "She told me that in my own office in July, and I did not understand one word of it until about 4 o'clock this morning." Honoria Brooks left on the last day of August, and Nathaniel walked her to the carriage, and neither of them had spoken 20 words in a fortnight. "You will lose this place," she said. "Possibly." "Your father would—" "My father took a third of a mill off a better man for $900 and spent 14 years being sorry about it in private." Nathaniel handed her up. "I've decided to be sorry in public. It's cheaper in the long run, and it costs more up front." Honoria arranged her skirts. "That girl," she said, "will marry Carter by spring." "I know it. And you will stand there and let her." "Aunt Honoria." He put his hand on the carriage door. "I stood in front of 200 people and told them I spent 12 years locking a door on a woman and calling it kindness. If I so much as ride down that road now, I'm doing it again with a nicer speech attached." He stepped back. "So yes, I will stand there. That's the entire point of it, and I would give a great deal not to have learned it." She was silent a moment. Then, unexpectedly, in a voice that did not sound like hers at all, "I was a ward, you know." He turned. "In my uncle's house at Petersburg, 9 years. She looked straight ahead. "I ran that house from the age of 17, and when he died, his son put me on the road with $40 in a trunk. And I married your Uncle Samuel 11 weeks later, because there was nothing else on this earth for me to do." Her hands were folded very tight. "I did not want her to have that. I wanted her out with money and a house she could hold. I went at it in the ugliest way a woman can go at a thing, and I have not slept well since, and I am not going to apologize because I am 71, and I would very likely do it again." Nathaniel stood there. "You could have told her that," he said, "in July, instead of the $2,000. "Yes," Honoria said. "I could have." And she rapped on the roof and was gone down the hill. He got up at 3 the next morning and lit the kitchen fire and burned his hand doing it and got it lit in 22 minutes. He kept a book. That was the thing Bess heard about in September and refused to believe until Silas swore to it that Nathaniel Brooks had bought a blank ledger at the store and was writing in it every night, and it wasn't accounts. It was every single thing. Fire lit at 3:10. Bread set. Went to the Kelso Place boy's leg healed. Crooked wants a stick made up. Widow Poole's roof. She has asked twice, I am told, in 18 and 18, and again in the spring. Fixed today. Ashamed. Sept 4. Learn today. The men do not eat at noon in August, because the water barrel at the North Field has been dry since 1816, and nobody would ask me for a barrel. A barrel. Sept 11. Annie Doyle's child is teething. I did not know a child could be sick from teeth. Bess would laugh at me. Bess is not here to laugh at me, and that is my doing also. He never showed it to anybody. Silas saw one page of it once by accident, and never told a soul what was on it, except one line, and that only years later, and only to his wife. The line was set to 19. 206 days since she has laughed in this house. I have started counting because I want to know the number when it stops. Clara Whitmore, meanwhile, was busy. She wrote 11 new leases in her own name and read every one out loud on the porch of the far cabin to men who could not read them twice, slow, and answered questions until the sun went down. She cut the rents 9 cents on the dollar and put the difference into a common seed fund that she made Silas administer because she said, "If it's mine, they'll thank me for it, and I've had a belly full of being thanked." She had the mill race dredged. She put a school in the old curing shed and hired a girl from Culpeper at $70 a year to teach 14 children their letters 3 mornings a week. And Thomas Carter came the first morning and did not speak, and came the 9th morning and read 4 words out loud, and William Carter had to go stand outside behind the shed for a minute. And she sat down at tables. That was the strange one. She had to teach herself. The first time Sarah Pierce laid a place for her at a Sunday dinner. Clara stood behind the chair for a full 10 seconds before she could make herself take it, and Sarah, who was not a subtle woman, said, "Sit down, Clara, Lord above. It's a chair, it ain't a courtroom." "Sarah, I'm trying." "I know you are, honey." Sarah pushed a plate at her. 12 years I watched you carry that ham past me. Eat the damn ham." October came, and the letter came with it, and Clara turned it over twice before she opened it because she did not recognize the hand. It was Nathaniel's. There were 4 lines in it. "Miss Whitmore, I have made inquiries. Mr. Ellis Pruitt keeps a school at Zanesville in the state of Ohio. He is married 9 years and has 3 children. His wife's name is Martha. I am told he speaks well of Virginia. I do not write to be forgiven. I write because I took a thing off you in 1813 without telling you, and it is the only piece of it I have any power to hand back. What you do with it is yours. N. Brooks." Clara sat on her own step with that paper for a long time. Bess came out and looked at her. "Bad news." "No." "Then what have you got that face on for?" "He found him," Clara said. "Ellis Pruitt. He went and found him, and he wrote it out, and he did not put one word in it about himself." She folded it. 9 years I thought nobody ever came for me, and now I know a man did, and I know his wife's name is Martha, and I know he's got 3 children, and he speaks well of Virginia." Her voice went unsteady. "Bess, do you understand what he's done? He's shut the door on his own foot. He's given me the one thing that proves he lied to me, and there's nothing in it for him at all." Bess sat down. "You want my honest, always." "That man is doing the hardest work I ever seen a Brooks do," Bess said, "and he's doing it where you can't watch, and he's doing it whether you ever come back or not. And I have known him since he was in a dress, and I did not think he had it in him." She smoothed her apron. "And it don't obligate you to one single thing. Both them things is true at once, and any fool that tells you different ain't never been a woman." William Carter asked her in November. He did it out on the road between the 2 places on foot, both of them leading horses, because he had learned by then that she talked easier when she was walking. "Clara, that's the first time you've called me that." "I know it. I've been saving it." He stopped. "I'd like to marry you." She stopped too. "I ain't going to make a speech," he said. "I made my speech in July with my hat in my hands, and I ain't got another one. I'll just lay out the terms 'cause you're a woman who likes terms." He turned the reins in his hand. "Your ground stays yours. In your name on the county book, not a word of it comes into mine. I'll sign whatever paper a lawyer wants to make that stick. Thomas thinks you hung the moon, and he's told me so out loud, which he ain't done about nothing since his mama died. And I love you." He said it plain the way he'd say a fence needed mending. "I ain't going to dress that up either." Clara couldn't look at him. "William. Now here's the last of it." His voice didn't change. "I've thought on this a good while, and I'd rather say it than have it sitting under the floor for 30 years. I know what's up on that hill." "There is nothing up on that hill." "Clara, there is nothing up on that." "There's a man up on that hill," William Carter said, "who sold a mill without the water in it." She went absolutely still. "He what?" "August. Marbury's had the mill since August, and every man in this county knows the race went with your parcel and not with the wheel." He was watching her carefully now. You didn't know? No. Well. He looked away down the road. I reckoned you didn't from the way you been. And I've had that in my pocket 11 weeks, and I want it noted that I could have kept it there. Clara's hands had gone to her mouth. How much? She said. Marbury paid $3,001. Mill's worth better'n 5 with the water. $2,000. Give or take. He gave away $2,000, and he never... She turned in a circle in the middle of the road. He never said one word. No, ma'am, and that's what I'm getting at. William waited until she looked at him. I ain't asking you to stop feeling whatever that is. I'd be a liar and a fool both. I'm asking if you can stand at a rail with me and mean it while it's still in you. He said the next part slow. 'Cause I've been married once, Clara, and I know what it is to be somebody's whole world, and I ain't willing to be somebody's good sense. You'd be kind to me every day of my life. I'd die of it. That's not fair. It ain't, he agreed. Neither's the other thing. She stood in that road and cried, and it made her furious, and he had the decency to look at the horizon. Take your time, he said. Ain't I always said that? You have. Well, he put his hat back on. Only this once I'd take it as a kindness if you didn't take too much. She did not sleep that night or the next, and on the third day she did the only thing she knew how to do when a thing would not come clear. She got out a ledger. She actually sat down at her own table with a blank book and ruled 2 columns, and Bess came in at 10 o'clock and looked over her shoulder and said, Child, what in the Lord's name is that? It's a comparison. Of men. Of futures. You are the strangest woman ever drew breath in this county. Bess sat down. Read it out. I will not. Read it out, or I'll read it my own self, and my eyes is bad, and I'll say it wrong and loud. Clara put her face in her hands and laughed and read it out. Left column. Marry Mr. Carter, 260 acres joined to 200, which makes 460 with water on it, which is the best small holding between here and the ford. A husband who asks me questions. A boy who has started talking. A man who has never once in 6 months made me feel like a thing that got fetched. Her voice was steady, and then it wasn't. A life I would be glad of every day of it. And the right? Clara looked at the right column. It was blank. That's my trouble, Bess, she said. There's nothing to write in it. There's no acres in it. There's no house. There's nothing but a man on a hill. I told not to come, who's doing what I told him. And I've got no idea if there's anything there at all, or if I'm just a woman who can't put down a thing she carried for 12 years. Bess reached over and turned the book around. Then she took the pen out of Clara's hand and wrote 4 words in the right column in a heavy, cramped, half-schooled hand. He counted the days. Silas told me, Bess said. He's seen it in that book of his. 206 days since you laughed in that house, and he's counting them, and he's counting them to know the number when it stops. She put the pen down. Now that's all I got, and it ain't worth 260 acres. But it goes in the column 'cause it's true. Clara sat looking at the 4 words. I don't want to be the woman, she said, who gets to be happy and won't take it. No. I don't want to be that woman, Bess. Then don't be her. Bess got up. But don't be the other one neither, the one who takes a good man 'cause the ledger's tidy. I watched my sister do that in Halifax County, and I buried her at 41 with a face on her like a closed drawer. She got to the door. You've had 12 years of doing what the paper said. You got your own paper now. Do something the paper don't say. The rain came the 4th week of November, and it did not stop. 4 days of it, and then 6, and the ground that had not taken water since June could not take it now. It ran off the burnt fields, like off a tin roof, and the creek came up 2 feet in a night, and Silas Doyle came pounding on the door of the far cabin at 5 in the morning of the 8th day. Miss Clara, the race. She was up. How bad? Head gate's holdin', ditch bank ain't. She cuts through at the bend, and she takes the whole run of water out the low side, and it goes down through the Kelso place and the pool place and every cabin on that flat. How long have we got? Hours, maybe. How many men can you raise? Silas hesitated, and she knew him well enough by now to know exactly what that hesitation was. Say it. 22 of mine, Silas said. And Mr. Brooks has got 18 up top, and his own east ditch is fixin' to go the same way at the same time, and there ain't but one crew's worth of daylight in this county, ma'am, and the water don't care whose name is on the book. Clara was already pulling her coat on. Then we do both, she said. Ma'am, we can't do both. Silas, we can't do both. He said it hard because it was true, and because there wasn't time to be gentle. It's 4 miles apart and 40 men in one day. Somebody's ditch goes. Clara stood in her own doorway with her hand on the frame. 11 families on the flat, and 18 men and 900 acres, and a man who had sold a mill without the water in it and never said a word. Get the wagons, she said. All 6. And Silas. Ma'am. Go up the hill and tell him. Tell him what? Tell him Clara Whitmore says the ditch bank goes at the bend by noon, she said, and that I am taking 22 men and every wagon I own onto his east ditch, and if he wants his own flat saved, he had better be standing at my head gate by 8 o'clock with every hand he's got, because I have run this water for 12 years, and there is not one man alive who knows that bend but me. Silas stared at her. You're giving him your crew. I'm giving him my crew, and he's got to save your ground with his. That's right. Ma'am, if he don't come, he'll come. Come, Clara said. And Silas Doyle, who had known her 11 years and had never once seen her look the way she looked in that doorway, said yes'm and ran. He came at 7, not 8. 7 with 18 men, 4 wagons, both his own teams, and every fence rail off his own north line already loaded, because he'd started pulling them the minute Silas cleared the yard, and he came up out of that mud at the head gate, soaked through to the skin, and found Clara Whitmore standing on the bank with a shovel. They looked at each other for about 2 seconds, which was all either of them had. Where? Nathaniel said. The bend. 60 foot of it, and the low sides already weeping. Rails or sacks? Rails first, then sacks, then anything that'll hold. She was already walking. Your east ditch goes at the culvert, not the bank I built that culvert in 18 and 14, and it's 4 inches too narrow. And I have told your father, and I have told you. You told me in March. She stopped. I've got it in the book, Nathaniel said. March the 9th. You told me, and I said I'd see to it, and I didn't. He swung down off the wagon. Silas has the number of the men. Tell me where to put mine, and I'll put them there, and I won't say another word all day. Clara Whitmore looked at him with the rain coming off both of them. 20 on the bend, she said. 10 on the culvert. And you at the bend, because if that head gate lifts, somebody has to go in the water and shut it, and there is not another man on this place tall enough to reach it. Nathaniel Brooks nodded once. Then I'm at the bend, he said, and went. They worked the bend for 5 hours, and it held, because 40 men would not let it go. Rail. Comin'. That ain't a rail, Tobias. That's a stick. I said rail boy off the wagon, the long ones. Silas. Clara was up to her knees in it driving stakes. Leave him. Tobias oak ones, the ones with the bark off. Count 6 and bring 6. Yes'm. She had put Nathaniel Brooks on the worst 40 feet of that bank, and he had not lifted his head in 5 hours. He had taken off his coat in the first 10 minutes and given it to the Kelso boy who had come out in a shirt, and after that, he was just another man in the mud. And by 9 o'clock, the men had stopped stepping around him, and by 11, a tenant named Poole had hollered, "Hold that Brooks," at him without a mister in front of it, and neither of them had noticed. At 11:30, the low side blew out. It went with a sound like a wet sheet tearing, and it took 4 feet of bank and a man with it, Poole, who went under the slide sideways with his shovel still in his hand, and Nathaniel Brooks was in the water before anybody had finished shouting. He got a fist in the man's collar. He got his boots into the failing bank. He got him up the slope with Silas and 2 others hauling on both of them, and Poole came out coughing water and mud and said, "God Almighty." And Nathaniel said, "Are your legs under you?" "They're under me." "Then get off this bank." "I ain't going off this." "Off the bank, Mr. Poole, you've swallowed half the creek." "Mr. Brooks." Poole spat and stood and looked at him. "That's my house down there. 11 year I been on that flat. You go on and try to make me." Nathaniel Brooks looked at him for a second. Then he said, "Then take the low end and stay where I can see you." and handed him back his shovel, and Poole took it, and something passed between those two men that neither one of them would ever have found words for. Clara had seen the whole of it from 20 feet. She had seen a man go under, and she had seen who went in after him, and she went back to driving stakes with her hands shaking so badly she split her own thumb on the maul and did not stop. At noon, Tobias came down the road on a mule at a dead run. Miss Clara, the culvert." She caught the bridle. "Say it slow. It's cuttin'. Under the road, ma'am, both sides, and Mr. Doyle's boy says she'll go inside the hour, and when she goes, the whole east ditch comes out the top and runs down." "Down where?" Tobias's face did the thing a 15-year-old's face does when he understands he is delivering a sentence. "Down onto the flat," he said. "Same as this'n." Silas came up the bank at a run. "Ma'am." "I heard him." "We ain't got the men." "I heard him, Silas. You send 10 off this bend, and we lose the bend by 2 o'clock. And if we lose the bend, it don't matter what the culvert does. And if we don't send 'em, the culvert takes the flat anyhow from the other side." Silas was gray in the face. "It's the same 11 houses either way. We can't hold both ends of it." And then Nathaniel Brooks said from the water without turning around, "Cut my east bank." Everybody stopped. "Say that again," Clara said. He climbed up out of it and stood there streaming. "The culvert's 4 inches narrow because I never fixed it. So don't fix it now, don't fight it at all. Go up above it, and cut my own bank on the north side wide, and let the whole ditch go out into my east acreage." He said it flatly like a man reading a figure off a page. 900 acres, and it's the only low ground between here and the ford, and it'll take every drop of that water and hold it. Nothing on it but stubble and my own house. "Nathaniel, there's nobody living on it. That's the whole of the argument. That's your ground. Clara, it is a field." He wiped his face with his forearm. "There are 11 houses on that flat with people asleep in them, and I have got a field, and I have spent 12 years not being able to tell the difference between those two things, and I am telling you that I can tell the difference now. Cut my bank." Silas Doyle looked at Clara. Clara Whitmore looked at the man in front of her for about 3 seconds, long enough for her whole chest to go strange, and then she turned and said, "Silas, take 8 men and both the mattocks and cut Mr. Brooks's north bank 60 feet wide at the elbow, and do not stop cutting until the water tells you to." "Yes, ma'am." "And Silas, take Tobias off that mule and put a grown man on it and send him to the Poole place and the Kelso place and every cabin on that flat and tell them to get up on the ridge with the children. Now, not after they've packed, and if anybody argues, tell them it's my order and they can argue with me Sunday." "Yes'm." "Go." Silas went 11 steps and turned around. "Miss Clara." "What?" 12 year. I worked this water for a man that never come down out of the house," he said, "and I have been on this bank since 5 o'clock this morning with the both of you, and I just want it said once out loud in front of witnesses before this day gets any worse." Then he ran. William Carter came at 1 o'clock with 9 men and every fence rail off his own north line. He came down the road with the wagons, and he didn't slow up, and he didn't make a speech. He pulled up at the head gate, looked at the bend, looked at the water, and said, "Where do you want us?" "William." "Ma'am, in about a minute, I'm going to be up to my belt in a ditch, and it'll be too late to ask." He was already off the wagon. "Where?" "The low end with Poole. It's the piece that's going." "Then that's where we'll be." He got 2 steps and stopped and looked at Nathaniel Brooks, who was 15 feet away with a rail on his shoulder, and the two of them held it for a moment in front of 40 men. "Brooks." "Carter." "You cut your own bank." "I did." William Carter took that in. "Well," he said, "that's a day's work," and went down to the low end and put his back into it, and for the next 4 hours the two of them worked 90 feet apart in the same ditch, and neither one said another word to the other, which was in that county, in that year, as near to respect as 2 men in that particular position were ever going to get. At 4:30, the head gate lifted. It lifted because the whole weight of a flooded creek came down against a wooden gate that had been hung in 1811, and it came up off its seat about 8 inches, and 8 inches was the entire ball game. "It's up. Get off the bank." "It's up, the gate's up. Off the bank." And Clara Whitmore heard herself scream a name across the water in front of 40 men. Nathaniel. He was already going in. He went in off the top of the gatehouse with a chain in his hand, and he went under, and he did not come up, and Clara Whitmore stood on that bank with both hands over her mouth for 11 seconds. 11, she counted them. She counted them the way she had counted them once on a landing with linens over her arm, and then his head came up on the downstream side, with his arm through the chain, and he got it around the post, and he hauled. He can't hold it. He's holding it. Get a rope on him. Get a rope. William Carter got there first with the rope. He went flat on the boards with his bad shoulder into the plank and his arm down in the water, and got a fist in the back of Nathaniel Brooks's shirt, and he held 180 pounds of drowning man and a lifting gate against a flooded creek, while 4 other men got the chain on the windlass, and afterward he could not lift that arm above his own head for a month. The gate came down. The water went where it was told, and Nathaniel Brooks came up over the edge of those boards on his hands and knees, coughing creek water, and looked up into the face of the man who had just pulled him out, and said the first thing he'd said to William Carter in 3 months. "Much obliged. Don't mention it." "I mean to mention it." "Well," William said, sitting back on his heels, "then mention it some other day, 'cause I ain't got the strength for it now." The bend held. The flat held. 11 houses, 41 souls, 1 drowned mule, and a chicken coop that turned up 2 miles downstream in a fork of a sycamore, where it stayed for 6 years and became a local landmark. And 900 acres of Brooks land went under 3 feet of water and stayed under it for 9 days and came out silted to the fence tops. They counted the men twice at dark, and everybody was standing. Then Silas Doyle said, "Where's Brooks?" They found him sitting on the wagon tongue with his head down, and when Clara put her hand on his shoulder, he came up off it like he'd been shot. "I'm all right." "You're not." "Clara, I'm all right. You've been in that water 4 times today, and your hands are open to the bone, and you cannot make a fist, and I have watched you not make one for an hour." She took his wrist. He let her. "Bess is at my house. You're coming to my house." "That isn't Nathaniel Brooks." Her voice cracked all the way through. "I have got no fight left in me today, not one, so I am asking you to please for once in 12 years do the thing you're told." He laughed. It came out as a cough. "All right," he said. They put him in Bess's chair by the smoking stove, and Bess took one look at his hands and said, "Lord Jesus," and went for the basin, and Clara Whitmore sat on a stool in front of a man in her own house and washed the mud out of his hands for an hour, with the whole of her heart going like a hammer in her ears. Neither of them said one word the entire time. At the end of it he said, "Thank you," and she said, "Don't," and that was all. He was gone before daylight. Bess found the chair empty, and the fire built up, and the water bucket filled, and went and stood in the door of Clara's room and said, "He's gone." "I know it." "You awake all night?" "Yes." "Well." Bess came in and sat on the end of the bed. "He built the fire, and he filled the bucket, and he never woke nobody. That's a thing a man does when he's been thinking about who fills the bucket." Clara lay there looking at the ceiling of her own house. "Bess." "He went in the water 4 times. He did. He cut his own bank. He did that too. 900 acres, Bess. He's finished. He's got a silted field and a mill he sold without the water in it, and there's not a crop coming off that place for 2 years. That's about the size of it." Clara put her arm over her eyes. "And I am lying here," she said, "trying to be honest with myself about whether I want the man or whether I want the story, and I cannot get to the bottom of it. And there is a good man 4 miles down that road who deserves an answer from a woman who knows her own mind." Bess was quiet a while. "Can I say a hard thing? You've never once asked permission before. I'm asking now 'cause this'n's hard." Bess folded her hands. "Child, you didn't scream my name off that bank." Clara didn't move. 40 men heard you," Bess said. "William Carter heard you. He was 15 foot away with a rope in his hand." Bess. "I ain't saying it to shame you. Ain't a thing to be ashamed of." Bess got up. I'm saying you already know your own mind. You noted at 4:30 yesterday afternoon with your hands over your mouth. Everything you've been doing since is manners. William Carter came at noon with his arm strapped up and did not get down off the horse. Don't say it, he said. William. Ma'am, I've had all night and a bad shoulder to think on it, and I'd take it kindly if you'd let me go first, 'cause if you say it first, I'll spend the rest of my life being a man who got told. He shifted the reins to his good hand. I heard you. Clara's eyes closed. I heard you holler, he said, and I want you to know that I went for that rope anyhow, and I'd go for it again tomorrow, 'cause I don't hold a man's life cheap, and I ain't small. But I laid there on them boards with my arm in the water, and I thought, well, William, that's your answer, and you got it in about the worst way a man could get it, and there ain't nothing to be done about it now, but haul. I never lied to you. No, ma'am, you never did. He said it firmly. You told me straight in July that you wasn't going to say yes out of temper. You told me in November there was nothing on that hill, and you was wrong, but you wasn't lying, you didn't know it yet. And I'll tell anybody that asks, and I'll tell it in front of the church if the widow gets to talkin'. Clara had her hand on the gatepost, and she was holding on to it. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry at me. I can't stand it. He almost smiled. I asked you twice, and you give me a straight answer both times, and the second one just took a while to finish. That ain't a thing a man gets to be angry about. It's a thing he gets to be proud he was in. William. Ma'am. Would you, her voice went, would you still let Thomas come to the school? And William Carter looked down at her from that horse for a long moment, and then he said, Clara Whitmore, if you had asked me anything else on this earth, I might have said no, just to feel something. He turned the horse. He'll be there Monday. He's reading 12 words now. 12. 12. He got 10 feet and stopped. One more thing and then I'm done. When you go up that hill, and you're going up that hill, so don't stand there looking at me, don't you go up out of gratitude. William. He went in that water for 11 houses, not for you, and if you go up there to pay him for it, you'll be doing to him exactly what he done to you for 12 years. He put his hat on. Go up 'cause you want to, or don't go at all. That's the last free advice I've got in me. He rode down the road and did not look back, and in the spring of 1821, he married a widow from Culpeper named Hester Rand, who laughed like a barn door and had 2 girls of her own, and he was happy. And Clara Whitmore stood up at that wedding, and anybody who wanted to make something of it in that county learned quick enough not to. She went up the hill 3 days later. She went at 7 in the morning because she wanted him awake, and she wanted the light, and she found him in the kitchen with his hands wrapped feeding a fire. He stood up so fast he knocked the chair over. He didn't pick it up. Clara. Sit down. Nathaniel, sit down. You look like a man about to make a speech, and I have not come for a speech. He sat. She put a folded paper on the table. What's that? The mill race, Clara said. The severance. Marbury's clerk had it recorded the 2nd of September, and it took me until Thursday to go into that courthouse and read it with my own eyes, and I want to hear you say it out loud. Nathaniel looked at the paper. Say it. I sold the mill with the water severed off it, he said. The race goes with your parcel. It can't be shut on you or on anybody holding under you, not by Marbury, not by his heirs, not by mine. That's $2,000. About that. You had a note to pay and an aunt to buy off and 900 acres in a drought, and you gave away $2,000 in August, and you never told me. No. Why, Nathaniel? And he looked up, and there was nothing left in his face to hide behind. Because you told me in that office that a gift can be taken back, he said. And you were right, and I understood it about 4 o'clock one morning in August, and I thought, well then. Do one thing she'll never know about. Do one thing there's no thanking in. And if it turned out I couldn't do that, then I'd have my answer about what I was, and so would God, and nobody else would ever have to be troubled with it. Clara stood there with her hand on the back of a chair. There's more, she said. Isn't there? No. Silas told Bess about the book. Nathaniel went still. There's a ledger, Clara said, that you have kept since September, and there is a line in it about a water barrel, and a line about a roof, and a line about a child's teeth. and Silas Doyle saw one page of it by accident, and he has told exactly one person in 11 weeks, and she told me on Tuesday because she is an old woman who does what she likes. Her voice was not steady. How many days is it? Clara. How many days? 291, Nathaniel Brooks said, and Clara Whitmore put her hand over her face and made a sound that was not crying and not laughing and had 12 years in it. He was up. He got as far as the middle of the floor and stopped himself with everything he had because Bess had told him once, "Not you, not tonight," and he had built his whole life since around not crossing that floor uninvited. "Come here," Clara said. He crossed the floor. He did not touch her. He stood a foot away with his wrapped hands at his sides and said, "Tell me what to do." "No, sir." "Clara, that's still the wrong question." She took her hand down. "You want to know what I came up this hill to say?" "Yes. I'm not going to marry you because you went in that water." She said it hard because it needed to be hard. "I'm not going to marry you because you cut your bank, or because you sold the water off a mill, or because you found Ellis Pruitt in Ohio and wrote out his wife's name in your own hand and put nothing in that letter about yourself. Though God knows that one nearly finished me. I'm not marrying a man's repentance. I have had a great deal of practice at being useful to you, Nathaniel, and being the reward at the end of your improvement is only being useful in a nicer dress. I know it." "Do you?" "I've known it since the courthouse steps." He said it steadily. "Every single thing I have done since August I have done on the understanding that you were going to marry Carter in the spring, and I was going to have to stand at that rail and watch it. That was the arithmetic. I did it anyway. That's the whole of what I've got to show you, and it isn't a claim on you, it's just the truth of what happened." Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Then ask me, properly, and know what you're asking." Nathaniel Brooks took a breath. "Clara Whitmore," he said, "I do not ask you to stay because I need you. God knows I need you. I need you every hour, and I always will, and that's got nothing to do with it, and it never should have." His voice was going. "I'm asking because I finally know who you are. You're Ellen and Amos Whitmore's daughter. You surveyed water before I could read a ledger. You found $1,100 of thieving at 19. You have carried 8 children into this world on this hill and never lost a mother. You cut the rents 9 cents and put a school in a curing shed, and you sat up with a survey book and beat my aunt and a Richmond bank inside of 30 days. He stopped. Started again. "And you laugh like the whole world's just been handed to you, and I have heard it exactly once in 12 years, and it was for another man, and I deserved that, and I would rather live in a house where I hear it, and it isn't for me, than live in one where it never happens at all." Clara had both hands pressed to her mouth. "Marry me," Nathaniel said. "Keep your ground in your own name. Keep your leases. Keep your school. Sit at the table or don't sit at the table, but never once fetch me anything as long as you live, because I will fetch it myself. And if I forget, tell me, and if I forget twice, tell the county." The fire popped. 12 years, Clara said. 12 years. I waited years to be chosen. Her voice broke wide open. "I want you to hear the whole of that sentence, Nathaniel, because I've said the front half of it to myself 10,000 times and never once got to the end. I waited years to be chosen. I never stopped hoping you'd learn how." "Clara, and you learned how," she said. "You learned it too late for the girl of 19, and you cannot ever give her back to me. And I have decided, this is not a feeling. I sat down with a book and 2 columns like a lunatic, and Bess wrote in it that I am not going to spend the rest of my life punishing a man for who he was at 4 and 20 when I have watched who he is at 6 and 30. Is that a yes? That is a yes, you impossible man." And Nathaniel Brooks, for the first and only time in his life, said nothing at all and put his ruined hands on either side of her face. And Clara Whitmore came up off her heels and kissed him in his own kitchen at 7 o'clock in the morning with the bread not set and the fire going crooked. Bess, who had walked up that hill behind her and had been standing outside the door for 4 minutes, said loudly to nobody, "Well, it's about goddamn time," and went home. They married in the spring on the west parcel on her ground. Silas Doyle gave her away because there was nobody else, and because when she asked him, he had to go stand behind the barn. Annie Doyle carried the baby who was walking by then and who was called Clara Bess and answered to neither. Abigail Rowe came down from Richmond and cried harder than anybody. William Carter came with Thomas, who read the marriage lines out loud in front of 90 people in a clear, high voice without one stumble, and Clara Whitmore had to stop the whole proceeding for a full half-minute, and nobody minded. And a letter came from Petersburg with no words in it at all. Only a bank draft for $1,400 made out to Mrs. C. Brooks, and beneath the signature line in a cramped old hand 4 words, a debt, not charity. Clara had that framed. They were poor for 3 years. The East acreage came back slow, and the silt turned out in the end to be the best thing that ever happened to it, though it took until 1824 to prove it. She kept her 200 acres in her own name to the day she died, and she never once let him pay a bill on it. The school ran 41 years. There is a road in that county named for a woman that most people driving it assume was somebody's wife, and in the front of a ledger that their granddaughter found in a trunk in 1889, in a heavy tired hand on a page, dated the 12th of December, 1819, there is a single line with no accounting under it. 291 days. It stopped today. I am not going to count anything ever again. Clara Brooks laughed in that house every day for